The US swings its axes stronger if China escalates East Sea. If China escalates, the United States will become more engaged in the South China Sea issue and will launch stronger response measures. China's aggression will only lead to the United States stepping up its rotation policy toward the Asia-Pacific. The closer the cooperation is to the South China Sea, the Nikkei review said. It is no surprise that high-ranking U.S. policymakers welcome the verdict, but also insist that they give China space. Washington will react strongly to any new Chinese provocations, but try to avoid making China understand that its actions are provocative. The July 12 surprise decision by the PCA against Beijing's claims to the South China Sea was a support for U.S. long-term policy in the disputed waters and exceeded Washington's expectations. The PCA has firmly denied the nine-dashed line that China claims to mark, claiming it has no legal basis. This ruling has reinforced America's argument that all maritime disputes in Asia must be resolved bilaterally and by peaceful means. The ruling also provides a legal basis for the campaign to protect freedom of navigation, in which American ships have moved closer to the artificial islands built by China. However, China's legal failures are likely to cause more anxiety and anger in the country and raise concerns about what happens next. The Chinese government could respond by escalating their activities in the South China Sea significantly, leading to dangerous confrontation with U.S. forces. In the midst of the war in the Middle East, the EU on the brink of disbandment, the constant threat from Russia and the threat of global terrorism, the United States now does not want one real security crisis in the South China Sea. Therefore, it would be no surprise that high-ranking U.S. policymakers welcome the ruling, but also stressed that they would give China space. Undoubtedly, Washington will react strongly to any new provocations of China, but the United States will try to avoid making China understand that its actions are provocative. However, in the long run, the ruling will benefit the United States and its allies. With a determined but clear logic, the PCA's ruling is a pretext for the United States to implement its current strategy for East Asia. Of course, China will argue that America itself plays hypocrisy. The United States has previously denied many of the judgments of international courts, and it did not ratify UNCLOS in 1982, which defines the rights and obligations of states in the oceans. But that does not matter. The PCA's verdict will have a big impact on other countries around the world who are aware of issues in the South China Sea. Most importantly, the verdict created a dilemma for China. Beijing's hardliners seem to be arguing for decisive action to prove that the court has no capacity and cannot enforce their verdict. There are also speculations regarding the establishment of an aerial reconnaissance area in which China will require aircraft operating in the South China Sea to inform the authorities in advance, or the blockade of the sea, or something worse. These measures will only increase the motivation for other countries against China. If China escalates, the United States will become more engaged in the South China Sea issue and will launch stronger response measures. China's assertiveness will only lead to the United States stepping up its rotation policy toward the Asia-Pacific region. Moreover, China's neighbors will have many reasons to cooperate closely in the South China Sea, as well as in Asian security in general. On the other hand, if China retreats in the South China Sea, then everything will be fine. In that case, the PCA's ruling would help restore stability to the sea. Even as the tension intensifies, the view of American politics suggests that war is still unlikely. In view of the Pentagon, China's strategic ambition is to share power with the United States in Southeast Asia. Beijing does not want to push America completely out of here, but it really wants to create a Chinese-influenced area covering the South China Sea, which is completely unacceptable to Washington. More importantly, China believes that it can only achieve its goal if it avoids conflict with the United States and, more broadly, with its allies. China will seek to enhance its influence by means other than the use of force, with tactics we have become accustomed to, including artificial island construction and the use of civilian vessels. But war is unlikely because it would be an over-risk that could undermine the Beijing regime. if the situation worsens. And this calculation will no change after the verdict, despite the words up close of the state media of China. The bigger problems facing the U.S. involve the future of international order. The PCA's ruling will be appealed by some Chinese to argue that the international legal system has been manipulated in favor of the West. They will say that international laws protect the powers and are used to suppress non-Western powers. They can also find allies in Moscow. Russian President Vladimir Putin has strongly criticized the U.S.-led order over President Xi Jinping. Mr. Putin said the order was a cover to cover up and justify America's geopolitical interests. There is a possibility of crises and all parties need to keep their cold heads. But without a doubt, the PCA ruling is beneficial to those who support the strong American involvement in Southeast Asia.